Mr. Speaker, in opposition, the Prime Minister said, and I quote, "Where the taxpayer owns a large stake in a bank, we are saying that no employee should be paid a bonus of over £2,000. Can the Prime Minister update us on the progress in implementing this promise?
Well, what I would say is this. It was the last government that bailed out the banks and asked for nothing in return. That is what happened. The reason we have difficulties with Royal Bank of Scotland this year is because of the completely inadequate contract that was negotiated by the government that he supported. But what we all want to see is the banks paying more in tax, and we will see that. We want to see the banks doing more lending, and we will see that. And we want to see bonuses cut, and we will see that. Perhaps you'd now make a constructive suggestion.
Miliband.
Mr. Speaker, let me say the country is getting fed up with the Prime Minister's pathetic excuses on the bank. He made a clear promise. No bank bonus over £2,000. It's still on the Conservative website. It's a promise broken. Now, he can't answer the question on bankers' bonuses. Let's try him on the bankers' tax. Can he explain to the British people why does he think it is fair and reasonable at a time when he is raising taxes on everyone else to be cutting taxes this year on the banks?
Well, we're not, is the simple answer. I know the Shadow Chancellor can't really do the numbers, so there's no point Wallace asking Gromit about that one. But let me give him the figures. Last year, the banks paid £18 billion in tax. This year, they're going to be paying £20 billion in tax. Their taxes are going up.
Miliband.
He just needs to look at page 91 of the Office of Budget Responsibility book, published in November. Labour's payroll tax on the banks raised £3.5 billion in addition to the corporation tax that they pay. His banking levy is raising just £1.2 billion. In anyone's language, that is a tax cut for the banks. Why doesn't the Prime Minister just admit it?
I've given him the numbers that the taxes are going up, 18 billion to 20 billion. Now let me explain the numbers in terms of his bank bonus tax and our bank levy, because obviously he can't get the numbers from the man sitting next to him, so let me give him the numbers. The bank bonus tax raised net £2.3 billion, and the author of that tax, who's sitting over there, the former Chancellor, says you cannot go on introducing this tax year after year. Very sensible, very astute. The bank levy will raise £2.5 billion each year once it's fully up and running. Yes, 2.5 billion is, even the Shadow Chancellor can tell him, 2.5 billion is more than 2.3 billion. And with the magic of addition, if you have a bank levy every year, which we supported and he opposed, they said don't do it, remember that, we will raise 9 billion compared with his 2.3 billion. Even the Shadow Chancellor can work out that 9 is bigger than 2.3.
Mr. Speaker, I think that is as close as we get to an admission from the Prime Minister that he is cutting taxes on the banks this year. The OBR is very clear. Labour's bank bonus tax raised £3.5 billion. He will be raising £1.2 billion in the bankers' levy. Now, he can't answer on bonuses. He can't answer on taxes. Now let's talk about transparency. And on this, I think he should listen to the Business Secretary. We know the Business Secretary is not a man to mess with, because he told his surgery before Christmas that he had a nuclear weapon in his pocket and he wasn't afraid to use it. So we should listen to him. And he said, if you keep people in the dark, you grow poisonous fungus. Now, on this occasion, he wasn't talking about the Chancellor of the Exchequer. He was talking about the bankers. Why doesn't the Prime Minister listen to his Business Secretary and implement our proposal for the disclosure of all bonuses over £1 million? It's on the statute book. It's ready to go. Why doesn't he just get on with it?
I think that was such a long question that I think the honourable gentleman I think it's the honourable gentleman should be thinking about the television career, and he get his brother to run the Labour Party. I think that's probably a better way round. You don't have to be so sure. Look, we want greater transparency, but let me put this to him. He had 13 years to put these rules in place. Why did he never get round to it?
Miliband.
You know he's got no answer when he starts asking me the questions. Why doesn't he answer the question on transparency? Now, let me tell the Prime Minister, he is now in the absurd position of being more of a defender of the banks than even the banks themselves. Because Stephen Hester, the Chief Executive of the Royal Bank of Scotland, went to the Select Committee before Christmas and he said, if the Walker report, which is a report that the Labour government commissioned, which made this recommendation, were to be implemented for the whole industry, I'm not arguing against it. I have no great problem with the issue of transparency and would have no difficulty. Mr. Speaker, on the banks, the Prime Minister has had 8 months to hold them to account. He's had 8 months to hold them to account. When is he going to start?
I take a lecture from a lot of people on how to regulate banks. I won't take one from the people opposite who let them get away with absolute murder. Who was it who set up the bank regulation that completely failed? Who bailed out the banks and got nothing in return? Who agreed a Royal Bank of Scotland contract with nothing in it about bonuses this year? Who? And by the way, the Right Honourable Gentleman was at the Treasury all the way through this. He was there when they knighted Fred Goodwin. Yes, wait for it. They knighted for him for services to banking. And they sent him away with a £17 million payoff. And that is why no one will ever trust Labour on banking or on the economy again.
And what was he saying when all that was going on? He was saying, deregulate the banks more. He even put the Vulcan in charge of his policy on the banks. Planet Redwood and Planet Cameron. And that is the truth, Mr. Speaker. There we have it. Life in 2011 on Planet Cameron. One rule for the banks, another for everybody else. And is it any wonder that now we know what his ministers say in private? His health minister says, in the privacy of his surgery, I don't want you to trust David Cameron. He has values that I don't share. The health minister knows he's out of touch. The House knows he's out of touch. And now, because of his failure on the banks, the whole country knows he's out of touch.
I think he knows this just isn't working. Yeah. We've ended up with a shadow chancellor who can't count and a Labour leader who doesn't count. I mean, he was in the Treasury. What did he do? What did he do when they set up the regulatory system that failed? He did nothing. What did he do when they paid out 11 billion in bonuses to bankers? He did nothing. What did he do when they said they'd abolish boom and bust? He did nothing. He is the nothing man when he's at the Treasury and the nothing man now he's trying to run the Labour Party.
Dr. Sarah Wollaston.